Hello. And welcome back to the English Academy. I hope you are having a wonderful day. Today, I want to share a story that is simple, but powerful. It is not a story about becoming rich overnight. It is not a story about secret investments. And it is not a story about luck. It is a story about ordinary people, making ordinary choices, and paying an extraordinary price for them. Take a moment and think about your own life. Have you ever received your paycheck, looked at your bank account, and thought, this month will be different? Maybe you promised yourself that you would save more. Maybe you promised that you would stop buying things you didn't need. Maybe you even made a budget. But somehow, a few weeks later, your money was gone. If that has ever happened to you, you are not alone. Millions of people around the world experience the same thing every single month. The surprising part is, most of them don't have a money problem. They have a habit problem. And habits, whether good or bad, quietly build our future. Today's story is about one man. His name is David. He wasn't born into a rich family. He didn't win the lottery. He wasn't a famous businessman. He was just an ordinary office worker. Someone you might pass on the street every day, without ever noticing. Before we begin, if you enjoy learning English through easy and meaningful stories, please like this video. Share it with someone who loves learning English. And don't forget to subscribe to the English Academy. Your support helps us create more stories that improve your English while teaching valuable life lessons. Thank you. Now, let's begin. David was 28 years old. He lived alone in a small apartment. It wasn't big. It wasn't luxurious. But it was enough for him. Every weekday followed the same routine. His alarm rang at 6:30 in the morning. He slowly opened his eyes, turned off the alarm, and stared at the ceiling for a few seconds. Outside, the city was already awake. Cars filled the streets. People hurried to work. Another ordinary day had begun. David got out of bed. He made a cup of coffee. The smell filled the small kitchen. For a few quiet minutes, everything felt peaceful. He checked the weather, read a few news headlines, then picked up his car keys. 40 minutes later, he walked into the office. Good morning, David. Morning. The conversations were always short. The faces were always familiar. The work was always the same. Emails, meetings, phone calls, reports. Hour after hour. The clock moved slowly. By lunchtime, David looked at the calendar. A smile appeared on his face. Today was Friday. Not just any Friday. Payday. His favorite day of the month. For the rest of the afternoon, he couldn't stop thinking about all the things he wanted to do. Maybe he would finally buy those expensive sneakers. Maybe he would order food from that new restaurant. Maybe he deserved a new smartwatch. After all, he worked hard. He earned it. At exactly 2:17 in the afternoon, his phone vibrated on the desk. He didn't need to guess who it was. He picked it up immediately. A notification appeared on the screen. Your salary of $3,500 has been deposited. David smiled. For a few seconds, every worry disappeared. His bank account looked healthy. His future looked bright. He leaned back in his chair, closed his eyes, and quietly whispered, "This month, I'll finally be smart with my money." He truly believed those words. The problem was, he had believed them every single month for the past 3 years. And somehow, Before the next paycheck arrived, his account was almost empty. David always blamed something. Prices were higher. Life was expensive. Unexpected bills appeared. But deep inside, there was a question he never wanted to answer. What if the biggest problem wasn't the economy, wasn't inflation, and wasn't bad luck? What if the biggest problem was staring back at him every morning in the bathroom mirror? David put his phone back into his pocket. He looked around the office. Everyone seemed happy. Some people were already talking about their weekend plans. One coworker was planning a short vacation. Another wanted to buy a new television. Someone else was discussing a luxury watch. It almost felt like payday had the power to change everyone's mood. David smiled. He opened a shopping app. Just looking, he told himself. He had said those same words many times before. But somehow, looking always became buying. The first thing he noticed was a pair of white sneakers. They looked perfect. The price was $220. David stared at them for a few seconds. He already owned 3 pairs of sneakers. None of them were old. None of them were damaged. He didn't need another pair. But a quiet voice inside his mind whispered, "You work hard. You deserve this. It will make you feel better." Without thinking any further, he pressed the Buy Now button. A small smile appeared on his face. For a moment, it felt like happiness. A few minutes later, he ordered lunch from an expensive restaurant. The meal cost $38. It was delicious. But it lasted less than 20 minutes. By the evening, he stopped at a shopping mall. He wasn't planning to buy anything. At least, that's what he told himself. Bright lights. Big sale signs. Beautiful displays. Everything seemed to call his name. He walked into one store. Then another. Then another. An hour later, he walked out carrying 2 shopping bags. A new jacket. A designer wallet. And a pair of sunglasses. His credit card didn't complain. His bank app stayed silent. Everything felt normal. As he drove home, David felt proud. This is what success looks like. He smiled at his own reflection in the car window. That night, he placed the shopping bags on his bed. He carefully opened every box. The new shoes looked amazing. The wallet smelled like fresh leather. The sunglasses looked expensive. He took a few pictures. Uploaded one to social media. Within minutes, the likes started appearing. Looking good. Nice choice. Bro is winning. Every notification made him smile. But the excitement slowly faded. The next morning, the shoes became just another pair of shoes. The wallet became just another wallet. The sunglasses stayed inside a drawer. The happiness that felt so powerful the night before had quietly disappeared. David didn't notice it. But something else had disappeared too. Almost $600. Gone in less than 24 hours. The strange part was, he didn't feel worried. Because his bank account still looked healthy. $3,500 had felt like a huge amount. Spending $600 didn't seem like a big deal. It's only a small part of my salary, he thought. What David didn't understand was that poor financial decisions rarely destroy a person in one day. They do it little by little. One purchase. One dinner. One online order. One unnecessary subscription. Each decision looked harmless on its own. But together, they quietly built a life where every paycheck disappeared before it had a chance to create a better future. David had no idea This was only the beginning. The weekend arrived. David loved weekends. Not because he could rest, but because weekends gave him another excuse to spend money. On Saturday morning, he woke up later than usual. He stretched his arms, picked up his phone, and opened social media. His friends were posting photos from beaches, luxury restaurants, concerts, and expensive hotels. One picture caught his attention. His old college friend, Michael, was standing beside a brand new sports car. The caption said, "Dreams come true." David stared at the photo for a long time. He smiled. But deep inside, something felt uncomfortable. He looked around his apartment. The walls suddenly looked old. His television suddenly looked too small. Even his car, which had worked perfectly for years, suddenly didn't feel good enough. That was the dangerous thing about comparison. It quietly changes the way you see your own life. 5 minutes earlier, David had been perfectly happy. Now, he felt like he was falling behind. He didn't know the truth. He didn't know that Michael had borrowed a huge amount of money to buy that car. He didn't know about the monthly payments. He didn't know about the stress. Social media showed the celebration, not the sacrifice. But David wasn't thinking about that. He only saw success. Around noon, his phone buzzed. It was a message from his friends. "Let's meet at the new restaurant tonight." David already knew it would be expensive. He also knew he should probably say no. He had already spent hundreds of dollars since payday. But another voice appeared inside his mind. "If you don't go, people will think you're cheap." That single thought was enough. He replied, "I'll be there." A few hours later, the restaurant was full. The music was loud. The lights were beautiful. Everyone looked happy. The table quickly filled with expensive food. Steaks, seafood, desserts, fancy drinks. Nobody looked at the prices. Nobody wanted to be the person who asked, "Isn't this too expensive?" When the bill finally arrived, it was $480. The waiter placed it in the middle of the table. For a moment, nobody moved. Then someone laughed. "We'll split it." Everyone agreed. David's share was $120. He could have cooked dinner at home for less than $15. But saying no felt harder than spending the money. He handed over his credit card. The payment was approved. His friends kept laughing. The conversation continued. But David became strangely quiet. For just a second, he wondered how many hours he had worked just to pay for one dinner. The thought disappeared almost immediately. Someone told a joke. Everyone laughed, including David. When he reached home that night, he opened his banking app. His smile slowly faded. Only 2 days had passed since payday. Yet his balance had already dropped far more than he expected. He closed the app without checking the details. Sometimes, ignoring a problem feels easier than facing it. But ignored problems rarely disappear. They usually grow in silence. And David still had no idea that his biggest financial mistake wasn't buying expensive things. It was spending money simply because he didn't want to disappoint other people. Monday morning arrived. The weekend was over. David sat quietly at his desk. His coffee was still hot. But something felt different. Almost without thinking, he opened his banking app again. His balance was now $2,398. He stared at the number. Only 3 days had passed since payday. He hadn't paid his rent yet. He hadn't paid his electricity bill. His internet bill was still waiting. His car insurance was due next week. And he still needed groceries. For the first time that month, David felt a small wave of anxiety. He grabbed a piece of paper. Maybe I should see where my money is going. He wrote down everything he could remember. New sneakers. $220. Restaurant dinner. $120. Designer wallet. $160. Jacket. $110. Sunglasses. $80. Lunch. $38. Coffee. Snacks. Parking fees. Streaming subscriptions. Small online purchases. One by one. The list became longer. David looked at the paper. He couldn't believe it. None of those purchases seemed dangerous when he made them. But together, they had already taken more than $1,000 from his paycheck. He leaned back in his chair. Where did all my money go? The answer was right in front of him. It hadn't disappeared. He had spent it. That afternoon, his coworker Emma walked over to his desk. "Hey, David. You look worried." David forced a smile. "I'm fine." Emma didn't believe him. "You know, my dad always says something interesting." David looked up. "What does he say?" Emma smiled. "He says money doesn't disappear. It simply goes where you tell it to go." David stayed silent. Those words echoed inside his mind. Money goes where you tell it to go. He realized something uncomfortable. Every dollar he earned had received instructions. The problem was, he had been giving his money the wrong instructions. Instead of building his future, he was paying for temporary excitement. Instead of creating security, he was creating stress. When work ended, David drove home without turning on the radio. His mind was busy. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about what to buy next. He was thinking about why he kept buying things he didn't truly need. As he entered his apartment, he noticed the shopping bags from Friday. The excitement was already gone. The shoes were lying in one corner. The sunglasses were still inside their box. The designer wallet looked exactly the same. Nothing inside the apartment had changed his life. But everything inside those bags had changed his bank balance. David sat on the edge of his bed. The room was completely silent. Then he quietly asked himself, if buying more things makes me happy, why does every payday end with more stress than the one before? The next morning, David woke up earlier than usual. The question from the night before was still inside his mind. He stood in front of the bathroom mirror. His face looked tired. Not because he wasn't sleeping enough, but because he was carrying something much heavier than he realized. Financial stress. It doesn't make loud noises. It doesn't knock on your door. It quietly follows you. Every single day. At work, David couldn't concentrate. He opened his computer. Read the same email 3 times. But his mind was somewhere else. Around 10 o'clock. His phone rang. It was an unknown number. Hello. Good morning, Mr. David. This is a friendly reminder. Your credit card payment is due in 3 days. David thanked the woman. And ended the call. For a few seconds, he simply stared at his desk. He had almost forgotten about the credit card. He opened the banking app again. Then he opened his credit card account. The number made his heart beat faster. $1,480. He slowly took a deep breath. When did it become this much? He tried to remember. The new phone last year. Furniture for the apartment. Weekend shopping. Restaurant bills. Online orders. Small monthly subscriptions. One by one. Every purchase had looked harmless. Together, they had quietly become a mountain of debt. David remembered something his father had once told him. When you borrow money, you're using tomorrow's paycheck to pay for today's happiness. Back then, David had laughed. Now, those words didn't sound funny anymore. During lunch, instead of ordering food, he walked outside. Across the street, there was a small public park. He sat alone on a wooden bench. People walked past him. Some were talking. Some were smiling. Some looked busy. Then an elderly man sat beside him. Neither of them spoke for a moment. Finally, the old man smiled. Beautiful day. David nodded. Yes. A few seconds passed. Then the old man looked at him. You look worried. David gave a small laugh. Is it that obvious? The old man smiled again. Only to someone who has looked the same way before. David didn't know why. But he suddenly felt comfortable talking. I work hard. I earn a decent salary. But somehow, I'm always running out of money. The old man remained quiet. Then he asked one simple question. Do you know the difference between being rich and looking rich? David frowned. I've never really thought about it. The old man pointed toward a luxury car parked nearby. Many people spend their lives trying to impress strangers. They buy expensive things. Not because they need them, but because they want people to notice them. He smiled gently. But truly wealthy people often spend their money building freedom, not building attention. David stayed silent. Those words felt different. They weren't complicated. But they were powerful. For the first time, David wondered if he had spent years chasing an image, instead of building a future. As the old man stood up to leave, he smiled one last time. Remember this. The easiest person to fool with money is yourself. Then he walked away. David watched him disappear into the crowd. He had no idea who that man was. But somehow, a 5-minute conversation had given him more wisdom than years of spending money ever had. David couldn't stop thinking about the old man's words. The easiest person to fool with money is yourself. Those words stayed with him all evening. After dinner, he opened his laptop. Not to shop. Not to watch videos. But to look at his monthly expenses. He logged into his bank account. Then he downloaded every transaction from the last 3 months. There were hundreds of them. At first, everything looked normal. Rent. Electricity. Internet. Gas. Groceries. Those were necessary. Then he noticed another group of payments. Coffee shop. Coffee shop. Coffee shop. Food delivery. Online shopping. Streaming service. Another streaming service. Music subscription. Mobile game purchase. Late night snacks. Taxi rides. Impulse shopping. David grabbed a calculator. One by one, he added the numbers. Coffee alone. Almost $180 every month. Food delivery. More than $300. Subscriptions. $120. Online shopping. Nearly $500. David stopped calculating. He couldn't believe it. None of these expenses had shocked him individually. A coffee was only $6. A movie subscription was only $15. A food delivery fee was only a few dollars. Every purchase had whispered the same lie. It's only a small amount. But small amounts, repeated again, and again, and again, had quietly become thousands of dollars every year. David leaned back in his chair. For the first time, he understood something important. People don't usually become broke because of one huge mistake. They become broke because of hundreds of tiny decisions that never seem important. He walked into the kitchen, opened the refrigerator. It was almost full of food. Yet just 2 nights earlier, he had ordered dinner because he didn't feel like cooking. He smiled at himself. Not because it was funny. Because it was true. He had been paying for convenience, without realizing the true cost. His phone suddenly buzzed. It was another message from his friends. New rooftop restaurant this Friday. Everyone is coming. David looked at the message for a long time. Normally, he would reply immediately. This time, he placed the phone face down on the table. He asked himself one question. Am I going because I want to? Or because I don't want people to think I'm missing out? The room became completely silent. Sometimes, the hardest questions have the simplest answers. A few minutes later, he typed only 3 words. Maybe next time. He pressed send. Nothing happened. The world didn't end. Nobody laughed at him. Nobody became angry. Instead, one friend replied. No problem, bro. Another wrote. We'll see you next week. David smiled. 4 months. He had been afraid of disappointing other people. Now he realized. The pressure had existed mostly inside his own mind. He walked to the window. The city lights filled the night. For the first time in a long while, he wasn't thinking about his next purchase. He was thinking about his next decision. And those 2 things were completely different. The next morning, David didn't feel like a different person. He wasn't suddenly rich. He wasn't suddenly disciplined. But something had changed. For the first time, he was paying attention. On his way to work, he stopped at his favorite coffee shop. The cashier smiled. The usual. David smiled back. For a moment, he almost said yes. Then he looked at the menu. $6.50. It wasn't expensive. At least, that's what he had always believed. Instead, he walked back to his car. He picked up the coffee he had made at home. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't served in a beautiful paper cup. But it tasted just fine. More importantly, it reminded him of something. Every dollar he didn't waste was another dollar working for his future. That afternoon, David received another message. This time, it wasn't from a friend. It was from an online store. Flash sale. Today only. Save up to 70%. A few weeks earlier, he would have opened the message immediately. Now, he simply smiled. He deleted it. David finally understood something. A discount is only a good deal if you were already planning to buy the item. Buying something you don't need is never saving money, even if it's 70% off. During lunch, his coworkers started talking. Did you see the new phone? It looks amazing. I'm thinking about upgrading. Another coworker laughed. I'll probably buy it this weekend. Someone turned toward David. What about you? You always like new gadgets. David looked at the pictures. The phone looked incredible. His own phone was almost 3 years old. But it worked perfectly. He put his phone back into his pocket. I think I'll keep this one. His co-workers looked surprised. Really? David smiled. It still does everything I need. The conversation quickly moved on. Nobody laughed. Nobody cared. For years, David had been buying things to impress people. Now he realized something funny. Most people were too busy thinking about themselves to spend much time thinking about him. That evening, David walked into his apartment. Instead of opening a shopping app, he opened a notebook. At the top of the first page, he wrote 4 simple words. My money has purpose. Below that, he made a list. Rent, food, utilities, savings, emergency fund. Only after those things would he spend money on entertainment. It was the first budget he had ever written. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't complicated. But it gave every dollar a job before he spent it. As he looked at the page, he felt something he hadn't felt on payday. Control. Not excitement. Not pleasure. Control. And for the first time, David realized, peace of mind feels far better than the temporary happiness of buying another unnecessary thing. For the next few days, David followed his budget. Not perfectly, but honestly. Some days were easy. Some days were not. Every time he wanted to buy something, he asked himself one simple question. Do I need this? Or do I just want it right now? That small question changed everything. One evening, as he was driving home, a strange sound came from his car. Click. 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 David turned off the music. The sound became louder. His heart started beating faster. This doesn't sound good. The next morning, he drove straight to a repair shop. The mechanic inspected the car. About 20 minutes later, he walked back with a serious expression. I'm afraid you need new brakes. And a few other parts should be replaced. David swallowed. How much will it cost? The mechanic looked at the estimate. About $900. For a moment, everything became silent. Just a few weeks earlier, that news would have terrified him. He would have reached for his credit card without thinking. He would have told himself, I'll deal with it later. But later always became more expensive. David opened his banking app. He looked at the small amount he had already started saving. It wasn't much. But it was enough to cover part of the repair. For the first time, he didn't feel helpless. He felt prepared. The repairs still hurt. Nobody enjoys spending money on car repairs. But there was an important difference. This time, the expense solved a problem. It wasn't just another impulse purchase. As David waited for his car, he looked around the repair shop. A young man was arguing with the receptionist. I don't have the money. There has to be another way. The receptionist remained calm. I'm sorry. But we can't release the car until the bill is paid. The young man lowered his head. David quietly looked away. He remembered being in similar situations. Not because he earned too little, but because he had spent too much on things that didn't matter. A few hours later, David drove home safely. The brakes worked perfectly. Nothing looked different. Nobody would compliment his new brake pads. Nobody would press the like button because he repaired his car. But deep inside, David felt something much more valuable than attention. He felt secure. That evening, he wrote another sentence in his notebook. Saving money is not about becoming rich. It is about being ready when life surprises you. He read the sentence twice. Then he smiled. Life will always bring unexpected expenses. A broken car. A medical bill. A family emergency. A lost job. Those moments don't ask for permission. They simply arrive. And in those moments, your savings become more than money. They become peace. David closed the notebook. Outside, the rain had started falling. He watched the drops hit the window. For the first time in years, the future didn't seem quite as frightening as it once had. Weeks slowly passed. David wasn't becoming rich overnight. There were no miracle investments. No secret shortcuts. No lucky opportunities. There were only small, consistent decisions. And little by little, his life began to feel different. One Friday afternoon, his phone vibrated again. Your salary of $3,500 has been deposited. Just a month earlier. That notification had filled him with excitement. Now, it filled him with responsibility. Instead of opening a shopping app, he opened his notebook. His budget was waiting. The first transfer was automatic. $700 went directly into his savings account. David didn't hesitate. He didn't ask himself if he should save this month. He had already made that decision before payday arrived. The money was gone. But this time, it hadn't disappeared. It had been moved to a place where it could protect his future. Next came the rent. Then the utility bills. Then groceries. Everything had a purpose. Every dollar had a destination. Only after taking care of those things did David look at the money that remained. For the first time, he knew exactly how much he could safely spend. That evening, he met his friend Michael for dinner. The same friend who had posted pictures with the sports car. Michael looked exhausted. Dark circles surrounded his eyes. "You don't look okay," David said quietly. Michael forced a smile. "I'm fine." But he wasn't. After a long silence, Michael finally spoke. "I think I made a mistake." David listened carefully. "The car?" Michael nodded. "I wanted everyone to think I was successful. So I bought something I couldn't really afford. My monthly payment is killing me. I can't sleep. I can't save. And every month, I'm praying nothing unexpected happens." David stayed silent. He remembered how jealous he had felt after seeing those photos online. He had imagined a perfect life. But the truth was completely different. Michael wasn't enjoying freedom. He was carrying pressure. As they finished dinner, Michael looked at David. "You've changed." David smiled. "A little." "What happened?" David thought for a moment. Then he answered. "I stopped trying to look wealthy. And I started trying to become financially peaceful." Michael didn't say anything. But the words stayed with him. On the drive home, David looked at the city lights. Everywhere he looked, he saw advertisements. "Buy now. Limited offer. You deserve more." For years, those messages had controlled his decisions. Now, he understood something they never wanted him to realize. The less control you have over your money, the easier it is for someone else to control your choices. He smiled, turned off the radio, and continued driving home in complete peace. For the first time, payday had not made him feel rich. It had made him feel responsible. And strangely, that felt even better. 3 months passed. The changes in David's life were almost invisible. His apartment looked the same. His car was the same. He still wore the same clothes. He still worked in the same office. From the outside, nothing had changed. But inside, everything was different. One afternoon, a new employee joined the company. His name was Ryan. He was young, full of energy, and just like David had once been, very excited about his first real paycheck. The following Friday, Ryan rushed over to David's desk. "I can't believe it. My salary just arrived." David smiled. "I remember that feeling." Ryan laughed. "I'm thinking about buying a new gaming laptop. And maybe a smartwatch. Oh. And I've been looking at a new motorcycle too." David quietly listened. It sounded familiar. Almost like listening to his younger self. Ryan looked at him. "What do you think?" David didn't answer immediately. Instead, he asked a question. "Do you already have an emergency fund?" Ryan looked confused. "No. Have you started investing?" Ryan shook his head. "No. Do you have any savings?" Ryan smiled awkwardly. "Not really." David nodded. Then he said something very simple. "If you spend your money before building your foundation, you'll spend years trying to fix your future." Ryan stayed silent. He wasn't expecting that answer. David continued. "Buying nice things isn't wrong. We all enjoy them. But nice things should be a reward, not a replacement for financial security." Ryan slowly nodded. That evening, David walked into a small bookstore. Months ago, he would have walked into a clothing store. Now, he found himself standing in front of the personal finance section. He picked up a book about investing, another about building wealth, and another about financial habits. As he paid for them, he smiled. Years earlier, he thought buying expensive products made him richer. Now he realized, knowledge was one of the few things that could truly increase his wealth. That night, he read for almost an hour. One sentence caught his attention. "Your income can build your lifestyle, but your habits build your future." David closed the book. Those words reminded him of his own journey. His salary had never really changed. His habits had. And because his habits changed, his future was changing too. Before going to bed, he opened his banking app. For the first time in many years, his savings account had crossed $5,000. He didn't celebrate. He didn't post a picture. He didn't tell anyone. He simply smiled. Some victories don't need an audience. They only need consistency. As he turned off the light, David realized something. The greatest feeling in the world isn't buying something new. It's going to sleep. Knowing your future is becoming stronger. One decision at a time. 6 months later, Friday didn't feel the way it used to. David's phone vibrated. "Your salary of $3,500 has been deposited." He looked at the notification, smiled, locked his phone, and continued working. There was no rush. No excitement. No urge to spend. Because payday was no longer the most important day of the month. Peace of mind was. After work, David stopped by a grocery store. He bought fresh vegetables, rice, chicken, fruit, milk. Only what he needed. As he walked toward the checkout counter, he noticed a large sign. "Buy 2, get 1 free." A few months ago, he would have filled his cart without thinking. Today, he asked himself one question. Would I buy this if there were no discount? The answer was no. So he kept walking. Saving money wasn't about saying no to everything. It was about saying yes. Only to the things that truly mattered. When David reached home, he made dinner. It wasn't a fancy meal. There were no expensive ingredients. No luxury desserts. Just simple, healthy food. As he sat down to eat, his phone rang. It was his younger sister, Emma. "Hi, David. Can we talk?" Her voice sounded worried. "Of course. What's wrong?" She took a deep breath. "My laptop stopped working today. I need it for college. I've been saving money. But I'm still a few $100s short." Without saying a word, David opened his banking app. A few taps later, he sent her the money. "You don't have to pay me back right now." There was complete silence. Then Emma quietly said, "Thank you. I was so scared." David smiled. "It's okay." After the call ended, he looked out the window. Months earlier, helping someone like this would have been impossible. Not because he didn't care, but because he had never prepared himself. He finally understood something. Saving money isn't only about protecting yourself. Sometimes, it's about being able to protect the people you love. That realization meant more than any new phone, any expensive watch, or any designer shoes ever could. Later that night, David opened his notebook again. He turned to the very first page. "My money has purpose." He smiled. Then he wrote one more sentence underneath. "Wealth is not measured by what you can buy. It is measured by the problems you can solve." He placed the notebook on the table, turned off the lights, and went to bed. Outside, the city was still chasing the next big purchase. Inside, David had discovered something much more valuable. He had stopped chasing the appearance of success, and quietly started building the reality of it. 1 year later, David was sitting in the same office. The same desk. The same chair. The same computer. At first glance, nothing had changed. But the man sitting there was no longer the same person. His phone vibrated. "Your salary of $3,500 has been deposited." David smiled. There was no excitement. There was no temptation. There was only gratitude. He already knew what every dollar would do before it even reached his account. A few minutes later, Ryan walked over with a worried expression. "David, can I ask you something?" "Of course." Ryan sat down. "I don't understand. We earn almost the same salary. But somehow, you never seem stressed about money. I always feel like I'm trying to catch up." David looked at him for a moment. Then he smiled. "I used to feel exactly the same." Ryan looked surprised. "Really?" David nodded. "I thought earning more money would solve everything. But it didn't." "So what changed?" David leaned back in his chair. "I stopped asking, 'How much can I spend?' And I started asking, 'How much can I keep?'" Ryan stayed quiet. David continued. "I learned something important. If your spending grows every time your income grows, you'll always feel broke. It doesn't matter whether you earn $3,000 or $30,000. If every extra dollar leaves your account, your future never changes." Ryan slowly nodded. "I never thought about it like that." David smiled. "Most people don't. They spend years trying to increase their income. But very few people spend time improving their habits." That evening, David left work. As he walked through the parking lot, he noticed something. The expensive sports car that Michael once drove was gone. Instead, There was a simple family car. Michael walked toward him. He looked happier than ever. No more sports car? David asked with a smile. Michael laughed. I sold it. Best decision I've made in years. I finally started sleeping peacefully again. David smiled. Sometimes the greatest upgrade in life isn't buying something new. It's removing something that steals your peace. The two friends stood there for a moment, watching the sunset. Michael looked at David. You know, a year ago, I thought success meant looking rich. What do you think now? David looked at the orange sky. Then he answered softly. I think success is waking up every morning, without being afraid to check your bank account. Michael laughed. I like that. Before they went home, David looked around. People were rushing. Shopping bags filled their hands. Advertisements flashed everywhere. Limited time offer. Buy now. Don't miss out. For a second, he remembered the person he used to be. Someone who believed happiness could be purchased. Someone who confused attention with success. Someone who spent tomorrow's money to enjoy today. He smiled. Not because he regretted his past, but because he had learned from it. He unlocked his car, sat quietly behind the steering wheel, and whispered to himself. The richest person isn't the one who spends the most. It's the one who needs the least, and appreciates the most. As he drove home, the city lights reflected across the windshield. Life wasn't perfect. Problems still existed. Unexpected expenses would still come. But David no longer feared them. Because he had built something far more valuable than a large paycheck. He had built discipline. And discipline quietly creates the future that luck never can. A few weeks later. It was Saturday morning. David wasn't in a shopping mall. He wasn't scrolling through online stores. He wasn't searching for things to buy. Instead, he was sitting in a quiet park with a cup of homemade coffee. The sun was rising. Children were laughing in the distance. Birds filled the air with their songs. Everything felt calm. His phone buzzed. A notification from his bank appeared. Monthly investment completed. David smiled. There was no excitement. No celebration. Just quiet satisfaction. A year ago, he would have spent that money on things he would barely remember today. Now, it was building a future he couldn't see yet. And somehow, that felt far more rewarding. As he looked around the park, he noticed the elderly man who had once spoken to him on a bench months earlier. The same gentle smile. The same calm eyes. David walked over. Hello. The old man looked up. I remember you. David smiled. You gave me advice that changed my life. The old man laughed softly. I only asked a few questions. David sat beside him. For a long time, I believed money was the answer to every problem. But now, I think habits are the real answer. The old man nodded. Money only makes you more of what you already are. If you're careless with $100, you'll probably be careless with 10,000. If you're wise with 100, you'll likely be wise with much more. David looked at the trees moving gently in the wind. I spent years waiting for a bigger paycheck. But the biggest change happened when I changed myself. The old man smiled. That's because success begins in the mind, long before it appears in the bank account. For a few minutes, neither of them spoke. They simply enjoyed the peaceful morning. Finally, the old man stood up. Before leaving, he turned toward David one last time. Never forget this. Money is a wonderful servant. But it is a terrible master. David watched him walk away. Those words settled deep inside his heart. On his way home, he drove past the same shopping mall where he had once spent hundreds of dollars without thinking. The advertisements were still there. The discounts were still there. The temptation was still there. But something was different. David was different. He no longer needed new things to feel successful. He no longer compared his life to strangers on the internet. He no longer believed happiness came in a shopping bag. When he reached home, he opened the notebook that had started everything. On the final page, he slowly wrote, "My life changed. Not because I earned more money. Not because I found a secret investment. Not because I became lucky. My life changed because I made better decisions. One day at a time." He closed the notebook, placed it back on the shelf, and smiled. Sometimes, the smallest habits create the biggest future. And sometimes, the richest life has very little to do with how much money you earn. It has everything to do with how wisely you choose to live. Thank you for spending your time with us today. If this story made you think, or helped you learn something new, please like this video. Share it with someone who might need this message today. And if you want to improve your English through inspiring and easy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to the English Academy. Until next time, take care of your money. Take care of your future. And most importantly, take care of the habits that quietly shape your life. Have a wonderful day. Before you leave, I want to ask you one final question. Imagine that two people receive exactly the same paycheck. They have the same job, the same salary, the same opportunities. 5 years pass. One person is constantly worried about money. The other sleeps peacefully every night. What made the difference? It wasn't luck. It wasn't intelligence. It wasn't a higher income. It was the small decisions made every single day. Every time you choose to save instead of waste, you are voting for a better future. Every time you avoid unnecessary debt, you are protecting your peace. Every time you invest in your knowledge, you are increasing your value. And every time you stop comparing your life with someone else's, you become a little happier. Money is important. There is no doubt about that. It pays for food. It pays for a home. It pays for education. It creates opportunities. But money can never replace discipline. It can never replace patience. And it can never replace good habits. Those things must come from you. David's story is not special because he became a millionaire. His story is powerful because he stopped making excuses. He stopped blaming inflation. He stopped blaming his job. He stopped blaming other people. Instead, he accepted responsibility for his choices. That single decision changed everything. Maybe today, you see a little of yourself in David. Maybe you've bought things you didn't really need. Maybe you've spent money just to impress other people. Maybe you've promised yourself, next month will be different. If that's true, remember this. The best time to change your financial future isn't next month. It isn't next year. It's today. Even one small decision can change the direction of your life. One less unnecessary purchase. One more dollar saved. One new book. One better habit. Small actions, repeated consistently, create extraordinary results. As you continue your own journey, don't chase the appearance of wealth. Chase financial freedom. Don't ask, how can I look successful? Ask, how can I build a life filled with peace, security, and purpose. Because at the end of the day, true wealth is not measured by the car you drive, the clothes you wear, or the phone you carry. True wealth is waking up every morning, knowing that your money works for you, instead of you always working for money. Thank you for listening to this story. I truly hope it helped you improve your English and inspired you to think differently about money. If it did, please like this video, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe to the English Academy for more easy English stories filled with powerful life lessons. Thank you for being here. Have a wonderful day. And remember, your future is created by what you do today, not by what you plan to do tomorrow.